When I was working my way up, I always wished that I had the chance to be able to have a little chat with the people that I looked up to, the ones that I saw on stage and really wished that I could be like. Well, my name is Chris Baran, and I have been around probably about 40 plus years now, a couple of hair awards behind me. And I figured I've got the opportunity that I can bring to you the hair heroes that we look up to and admire, and let you have and listen in while we have a conversation and find out their mistakes, find out what they did right and wrong. Welcome to Chris Baran's Headcases. This week's Headcases is really exciting for me. Why? Because I have a gentleman on that I've always been inspired by, and that is Mr. Ammon Carver. Now, to give you a few of his accolades, a multi-NAHA award-winning artist, celebrity stylist, a stylist that has been involved in advertising and fashion campaigns. He is a New York fashion runway stylist. People give him the title of Global Creative Director. I give him the title of friend. So let's get into this week's head case. Ammon, I have to say, just so everybody knows out there, we read that your bio and we talked about how amazing you are at everything. And I got to admit that I'm still a little bit starstruck here with as well. And we passed each other in the dark. We've at shows and so on. And we had a bit of a conversation the other day, but just for those of you that are listening and watching right now, it was really funny how you connect with somebody. Well, we hadn't really been what I'd call really good friends before that. We were acquaintances, but we had like an hour and a half conversation the other day. And I feel like you're my best friend now. Like it's like brothers from mother, etc. So I am just super excited about having you on here, Ammon. And I guess the first thing, what I find that most people are is that they want to find out, like, what's the backstory? Everybody's got their story about how they got into hair, and everything is a little different. Most people think, oh, you started from day one and you wanted to do hair, and that's. Tell me literally Tell me about prior to hair. What's the take?
Before I was hairdresser Ammon, I was horse trainer Ammon, believe it or not. I used to ride and train horses in Utah where I grew up. I thought I was going to be a horse trainer for sure. Had no intention of becoming a hairdresser or being in the beauty industry. In fact, I will confess to you, Chris, that prior to my experience with hairdressers, I was probably guilty of being one of those people who thought that being a hairdresser was what you did if you didn't do well at college. Fortunately, that's not how I feel now. But it kind of came about because I was training horses in Utah. Came out when I was 16. Had a bit of a difficult time just in my area, like finding myself and kind of letting go of the hang-ups or the kind of like, just finding myself and loving myself, period. It was hard. Yeah. So I went to Colorado, where one of the guys who I was training his horses, he had his horses there. And I'll tell you one thing, Chris, like if we have a little voice inside of our head, the worst thing you want to do is be all by yourself, isolated without any friends to help you talk that little voice out. So that's what happened. I went to Colorado to kind of escape what I felt was like an oppressed life kind of here in Utah. And then I went there and I didn't have any friends or anybody, and it was like bad. And so I literally remember to this day, the gentleman who offered me the opportunity to go there, he made his living he owned a chain of hair salons and a hair school in Colorado. So he had like 25 salons in Colorado and this hair school. And he came to me and said, Ammon, I can't imagine what you're going through right now, but why don't you go to one of my hair school, and then that way you can like be doing something or meet somebody. And I was like, are you crazy? I just told my parents I'm gay. I can't become a hairdresser too. They're going to lose it. And he was like, so honestly, Chris, and the only reason I tell that story, the backstory is I fell in love with hairdressers because of the way they changed my life. They saved my life. They helped me learn to love myself. And it's hard for me now to even talk about it without getting a little bit emotional, because it became very, very much my purpose in what I do.
Yeah.
I get on stage and I do what I do because I know firsthand that the beauty professionals or the hairdressers can change people's lives and save people's lives. They saved my life. And I remember every time I get up on stage, I look out into the audience, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You know how it is. The hairdressers, it looks the same. They look like the same people looking back up at you. It's like, I know you. You're my
Exactly.
people. And so every time I get up there, whether it's telling my story like I have right now, to impact one person, or maybe many people in the audience can relate to it, but I have committed to being able to be transparent about it and to say, like, you don't have any idea how great of an impact you can make in this role. So my job, I feel like, as a mentor, as a public figure now, is to just help people remember that they are way more important than they realize.
You said something really important there. I think that, and I want to deal with a lot more of this down the line, but I don't want to avoid this right now, because you said something that I think is really, really important, is that when you choose to help somebody in this industry, whether it's one person, meaning I'm in a salon and I'm going to help the person I'm working with and I'm going to teach them something, or whether you're on stage teaching to 5, 10, or 10,000, you do transform lives. And I think the hardest person, and I'm going to speak from my side on this one, is that the hardest thing to do is to push yourself out there, and you're on one side of this, you're thinking of yourself going, please like me, I want to do good for you, and on the other side, you really want to get your message out there and do to help people. So I think that it's that whole point of, where is that point in your life that you want to shift from behind the chair to helping other people? Whether it's, there's people listening out there that right now that do the same thing, but they teach only in their salons. So, but there had to be a link. Did you teach in the salon first and then get onto stage? Like, what was the transition point? Like, how did you get
Kind of.
into education? I think that's one thing that everybody wants to know. Everybody works behind the chair, but there's something magical that happens, that all of a sudden somebody's on stage, whether they want to, needed to, were forced to, as me, etc. But what was how did that happen for you?
That's funny that you said that. I was kind of forced to also, but not in a way that I like. I avoided it only because I think that, like a lot of people, like both my parents are teachers, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to be an educator. I'm not. Like, I was like, it's not me. But the way that it happened was, I had just barely like finished hair school. I was working like a booth rental salon. And one of the sales reps there, I got really lucky, Chris, because I started working behind the chair. And in the first year, you're going to think this is funny, and maybe we'll edit this down, but I can't help but like say, like, things happen for a reason for some people. I started behind the chair my first year out of hair school. There's a TV show that comes on for the first time, and it's old news, but at the first time it was called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. And
Really?
it was the first season that it came out, and I was like this openly gay kid in a very small suburb of Utah, where like all these women were like, oh my gosh, that's a gay guy? He must know how to do hair well. And it's so horrible to say, but like, I honestly think that's what happened. So in the first year that I started, within a year, I was booked out like 6 months in advance. Like, it didn't
Wow.
happen for other people. And I'm not here to say, I'm not going to try to like pretend to anybody that's like, because I'm some miracle like hairdresser who had all the right answers. I think it just happened at the right time, and I paid my dues in terms of like staying educated and staying on top of it. So the hairdresser, or the sales rep, she saw me just basically like drowning to keep up with these clients. And so she was like, she would take the orders for me and send them in. And I was just like, thank you. Just like, And so I was working and using one of the L'Oreal brands, using Matrix at the time. And basically, she sent in the Matrix education rep locally and just said, Ammon's using your color and having a ton of success. And she came in and said, would you like to educate? And I'm like, no. And she was like, okay, wait, before you say no, she was like, there's, you can go to twice a year. We send you to get education somewhere else. Then we get you the products before anybody else. And me, with a little bit of business sense that I had, was like, okay, if I know about the trends before any of the other hairdressers and I get the product sent to me before the other hairdressers, I'm going to have a little bit of like a head start. And that was literally the only reason I did it, was because I was like, well, if they're going to send me this stuff for free and I get to go to get training for free, like, why not?
Yeah.
And she was the same way. She was kind of like, yeah, sure. That's the benefit of it, but she knew that, like, once I got up there, because the first time she was like, okay, so I have a salon that I need you to go teach a class. And I'm like, I'm not into it. And she was like, all I want you to do is tell your story. She was like, just tell them what you do and why. She's like, I'm not going to ask you to like commercial talk about our products. Just why do you use it? What are your formulas? And then tell us your story. And she was right, because they didn't care about any of the specifics. They just wanted to know what I was doing and how it was working. And so when I kind of found that part, like the unlocking of the shackles or whatever, where you don't, and it's no longer about like selling something, it's more just about like connecting, then all of a sudden it became, wow, this is cool. This is powerful, because people just want to hear, and they want to know that you're a person and that you're not just like a microphone for a brand. You're just like, like, it didn't matter who I worked for at that point on, because I've had the opportunities like you to, I've worked with lots of manufacturers and things, and I made a promise to myself that education or not, like, I would always tell my story authentically, and I would never talk about something that I didn't believe in, or that I was told from a marketing angle, like spew it out and just like say it, but it didn't actually come from here. And I think that was probably, if I could like coin like secret to my success, that sounds kind of weird to say, but like, I think I just feel like I promised myself and to everybody that I would only speak about things that I really believed in. And that made it easier for me to get on stage, whether it was big stage, small stage, because if I didn't like it, I would just tell the brand, I'm like, I can't. So help me, give me something else to talk about that I actually do like, because I'm not talking about that because I don't like it.
Right.
So that made it easier for me, because I made a promise that I wouldn't spew bullshit.
Yeah. Well, you said something that was like, a couple things that I think that, if anybody's thinking about doing the things that, like, getting on stage and doing everything, there's a couple of things that you just said right in there that I think are really critical. Number one is you said connected. Number two is you said authentic. And number three you said is believe. Because if you don't believe in what you're doing, the bullshit meter goes up really fast and really high with the audience. They can read right through it. But if you're just yourself and you believe in something and talk about it, then people get it. And and I think that's what, people will buy something. And I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into a, how you sell and so on. But it's just like everybody has a problem. So if you say, look, this is my problem, I've had that problem, I believe in you because you're up on stage and I can sense your authenticity. And you just tell me, here's how you handle my problem. Here's how I got the results from it. And then people go, okay, good, thanks. I'll drink the Kool-Aid. Whatever you tell me, I'll believe.
Right.
Because you're doing it for the right purpose. That's awesome.
Well, and that was, I think, thank you, Chris. I think that I almost took it upon myself to like be against being an educator, because I wanted to make sure that it didn't sound that way. And it wasn't until I, truthfully, not because I'm here on your show or anything right now, but like until I met like yourself or like Sam, that I saw the ability of like, it's not about education because I'm trying to like teach you something, but it's about like communication and being able to like utilize words efficiently and effectively in a way that can touch people. So it wasn't about like learning how to teach so that I could like sound like a robot. It was more, or like sound like the brand wanted me to. It was more about understanding that like, oh, I can still feel their heart. I can still feel their intention, but they've got a way of organizing it now to deliver it in a way that I'm like, I'm still trying to tell the story and help you guys connect. And they've already like effectively, you know what I mean? So that was when I was first really inspired by you, was when I got to see the way you delivered it. And I'm like, oh, he's got every bit of that heart part that I need. But like, he just found a really smooth way of placing it for me, so I don't have to like chase for the message. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that. And what I love about what you just said in there is how it's just about touching people. That's all it is. And if people would just know that when people say public speaking is so scary, I wonder. First of all, I had that same belief. I was that same person years and years and years ago, terrified to talk in front of an audience. I won't even go there because that will take too long telling about all my foibles that happened. But the reality is once people realize that if you are with a friend and you're talking to somebody at a bar, at a club, at a Safeway store, and if you're out in public and you're talking to somebody, you're public speaking.
Yeah.
The only thing is there's other people around. So you just have to know a few things on how do you, that same conversation you're having with your best friends. Now, the people that are in the audience are just not your best friends yet. Yeah. And as long as you treat them that way, that they'll treat you with the respect as well. But I want to go back and to, especially with the connection that we talked about, because you came in at a really magical time. There's really points in the hair industry, and it happens between brands. It happens with people where all of a sudden there's a certain group got together. I know what happened with the group when, with the company that I represent, there was a magical time that got it. And I think that all of a sudden you'll notice another company sort of rises up, and you got in that same time where I believed, correct me if I'm wrong, when you joined, there was all the, and I can't even remember if you were called the art directors or if they were just, you had some fancy pants title, but the reality was there was you, Nick Stenton, Daniel Roldan, Michelle O'Connor, I think Daniel Kiesling. There were, help me, because there was Nick French was part of that as well.
Yeah. Chris Benson.
And it was a magical time when you guys were so damn creative. and the energy that you guys had amongst one another is I want you to talk about that. What was that like when you were with that powerhouse team, and what was it like interactivity wise? What was it like for you being around those people? Was it intimidating? Was it just everybody sat back and you just jammed? What was it like?
Well, yes. Intimidating, absolutely. Inspiring, absolutely. But I'll talk about it from first. Like, you kind of don't realize that you're part of something really amazing and big. Sorry, can you still hear me? Yeah, you don't really realize until you're kind of in it and somebody points it out to you, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, yeah. Because I remember, like, when I first started talking to people about like when things began. I don't know why, like it always happens to me. I talk about like when I first got on as like an artistic director for Matrix. That's when I feel like my career kind of started, which was probably about like 4 years into my actual like career as a beauty professional, licensed and stuff. But we had a general manager, and this is one of the things that I thought was really, really cool, was that it wasn't about anything that Matrix launched or did, like a product that suddenly like became like this thing. It was all about the way that we like were talking and communicating and were presented. So we had a new general manager his name is Colin Walsh.
Love that.
Not a lot of people knew who he was. But he came in and he just changed everything. Just changed everything about the way that we spoke, about the way that we believed in things. I remember he is probably the first person in my life that made me believe that I was more than I actually was. And I'll say it in a way that will kind of help. Yeah. And it sounds so funny even when I say it out loud. So I was just going to get through it before I laugh because it's embarrassing. But like, I remember connecting with him. I had just moved to New York City, like on my own dime. I remember I was from Utah, and I was like, I don't want to start, a whole career in Utah. I want to, I had like $5,000 in my bank account, and I was like, I'm going to just go to New York City. I think Matrix had flown me there to assist on a photo shoot, and I fell in love with New York City. No surprise, but I was fearless. My parents, they raised me to believe that I could do anything. And I love them for that. They gave me all this belief. They're like, the only thing that's stopping you is you. And so, I'm sure that they were probably like, oh gosh, what do we help them believe? Like, just getting ready to move to New York City, not knowing anybody. And they were like, are you really going? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, if I don't make it, I'll just come back here and we'll start again here. And they were like, okay, you're right. So I moved to New York, and it went well. New York can shoot people out and spit them out, or it can things landed really well for me. And when I got out there, that's when the work with Matrix started to really click, and that's where I started fast paced again. So Colin was in New York at the head office there, excuse me. So he was at the home office for L'Oreal for Matrix. And so I got to have a really close relationship with him because I would cut his hair and I would see him 3 days a week. And I remember cutting his hair one day, and there was a side of me that was sort of like excited, but nervous. And he said something to me that nobody had ever said to me. And it's embarrassing to say, but he said, "Oh, you don't understand, do you?" And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, You're Ammon Carver. You don't know that?" And I was like, "Shut up." And he was like, "No, listen to me." He's like, "You're Ammon Carver. You're going to make all these changes." And he just let me sit with it. And I was like, I don't know what to say. I'm kind of embarrassed. Thank you. That's sweet. And he was like, "This is going to be really fun." He's like, "Because I can see who you are and you don't see it yet." He's like, "But I can't wait for you to see it." And so from then on, I think I told you this last time, Chris, it's easier when you have somebody in the audience that already knows you're going to be successful, and they look up at you and they're just smiling, waiting for you to fall into that person that they already see, versus you looking out in the audience and seeing like, oh, are they picking me apart? Every time I would get on a stage for Matrix, whether it was 10 people or 1,000 people, I would look in the back of the room and his smile just said, "I can't wait for you to discover what you're about to do." And it made it so I couldn't fail almost, and that was the first time where it was like he's my first hero. And so Colin, he helped me see who I was and put me on stage with people that I considered like the gods, like Daniel Roldan and Nicholas French. I was like, I'm sharing the stage with these guys. And it took a little while for me to actually stand up there and project from the same level as them. Because for a while I would kind of shrink to the back of the stage while they would speak. And it just took some practice and some confidence to realize that I'm here just like they are. We have different paths, but the confidence comes in different ways. And thank goodness that those guys also, because there can be, just like in any industry, I suppose, there can be some people who are threatened or who don't want to see you do well. And so they could see that timidness and go, okay, I'm going to keep my thumb on you because you're already not ready to take it. But those guys weren't like that. None of them. Thankfully, all those guys that I became close with as the kind of Matrix heroes of the industry, or even any other brands too. They saw somebody who was trying, and they saw somebody who was could use some mentoring and some excitement. And all of them, I will say that I love this industry. All of the people that I've been able to be step in and go, wow, that's Sam Villa. Wow, that's Chris Baran. Wow, that's this person. And then as soon as I stood up there, everybody the first time you saw me, I knew who you were a long time ago. But the first time we actually met, you put your arm around me like we were buddies. And like you said in the beginning, we never got a chance to work on stage together. But through the years, it feels like we're just close.
One day.
So that. I don't know if I kind of got digressed there with the story, but it was such a great time with Matrix and all those artists, and I feel so privileged.
What I think that it is that and I'm going to use a word here that would generally mean the opposite of what I'm about to say. Because usually insecure people are so worried about themselves that when they're on stage with somebody or they see somebody else rising up, they want to push them down because that they think that they're going to get higher.
Right.
But there's like all the people that we talked about in there, I know them, and they're the ones that will go, listen, I know that if I make myself small and somebody else bigger than in everybody else's eyes, and this isn't what's in their head, but when they do it, the audience and the people around you see them and you as bigger than what they
Mm-hmm.
saw them as before.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm saying that is that I don't know. I can only speak for myself. Every time I say this, most of the people like you, as yourself, who have done it, you'll say, if I say I'm basically an insecure person too, they always go, yeah, me too. But I think there's a difference between insecure and putting everybody else down, and being insecure where you just want to do better, but you're willing to help other people do better and help
Yeah.
everybody else grow in the industry as well. And I think that's the biggest part of our industry is for so many years, there was this thing of manufacturers. And if you were an artist from one manufacturer and somebody else was from a different manufacturer, then you weren't allowed to commingle, God forbid, when all
Yeah.
it is about, we're all hairdressers. And the more that, think about it, if you would just have jam sessions where artists from all brands would get together and they just share tidbits and say, look, at this is what worked for me and this is what worked for you. And I think, look at what would that do for our industry, you know?
Yeah.
I think it takes it.
I
My motto has always been failing your way to the top. I talk about it all the time, but I
love
think
it.
that if you can help other people so that their failures are more minimal and then they grow faster, it would make our industry so much better. And you referred to it at the very beginning where, oh, we couldn't get a job anywhere else. I mean,
Right.
I know that people like you, myself, have this image that we want to build our industry into the point where you can stand right next door to any other profession and just feel as comfortable in your skin when you say the word hairdresser as anything else. And I think that's, God bless. That's what I find people like you, when whether it's meeting people for the first time for 100 years or whatever, that's the kinship that we all have, is that we just want our industry to grow. The people that just started off, how can we make their life better? How do we make it so that everybody else grows and gets more money? Everybody laughs when I say that because they think it's all this foo-foo stuff. But believe me, I've had money and I've had none, and I like money way, way more than having none.
Yeah, we
We
can't
have to
do
do
it
and
with
help
love
other
if we
people
don't,
that
if we
as
can't
well.
eat, if we can't make a living. It's like, it's all great to do everything with
Yeah.
your heart, but if you're starving, like, we need to be making money. I'm so glad you said that too, because I think that before I got to be running or rubbing elbows, let's say, with guys like you, I remember looking at the industry and seeing that divide, that like
Mm,
manufacturers were like competing. And I feel very blessed because by the time I came into my role, that was the first time you started hearing things like artists supporting artists. And it was
yeah.
almost like I got to be part of. I don't think I'll take as much credit as saying like I was the initiator, but I definitely was on board when the influence of like, let's not put borders up because of manufacturers. Let's love each other because we're artists.
Mm,
I got to step into that kind of energy for the first time, and it was perfect because it was like, no, you're right. I don't want to sit here and say like, I'm not talking to you because Sebastian's not as cool as Matrix. It's like, come on. Like, so I'm so grateful, that was a point in time where I got to come in and go like, no, like these artists are just like incredible, regardless of like the stuff that they use, like, it's in the can, like their hearts and their creativity is just astounding. And so
yeah.
what a cool thing to be part of now, and to look back and have people now say like, I don't feel that energy between the industry anymore, and I hope it doesn't ever go back there. But like you said, like that's my thing. Whenever I see new people coming into the industry, I'm like, do you guys know how it was? Like, do you guys know where we've been? So that like as you take the reins and move forward, do you know where we've been to get here, so that we don't slip
Mm,
backwards? Those are the kind of things that I kind of think about when I'm thinking about next generation. So.
yeah. And that's part of this why people have to know the people in the industry. You've got to know where people come from. I want to do just a bit of a soft left here right now.
Okay.
Because you and I were talking the other day about it being an education, and Christine Schuster, who, and I'm going to say she's well, I'm just going to give her this overall. She's the grand poobah of the PPD brand and all of et cetera. I'm so afraid of saying the wrong title that I'm just going to say she's the grand poobah S of principal of the PPD brands. But
Very,
I find
very
it interesting
appropriate.
because she asks everybody this, and I know she posed this to you because we were talking about this. She was at an event when she asked everybody in the room, what do you want to become? And can you tell that story of what happened when that goes, because that's going to give us our link into where I want to go
Yeah.
next.
Yeah. I mean, Christine, it was amazing. Like we just first kind of started, I just met her. I knew who she was, but I did not have any, like, I was afraid to talk to her at all. Um, and then she came in and kind of asked our group, like, what our goals were. I remember it was a small thing. She was like this matrix artistic directors, like you were talking about. And she sat in there and she goes, nice to meet you guys. I'm so excited that we're all going to be working together. What are your goals? And everybody kind of, and I did too, not just that like I something special or different, but like I made it like a point to make sure that I said from out loud from the get go years ago that I wanted to be a dad. And I said to her, I said, I have all these career goals, but I want to be a father. Just FYI, if anybody here is like wondering, I'm putting it out there very strongly and very clearly. I am 21 years old, but I want to be a dad. Okay. um, so yeah, like 6 months ago, I officially have Zach, but I remember like it's been almost, I mean, I've been a hairdresser now 22 years or something,
Yeah.
but I remember along the way, Christy and I was in New York and I've cut her kid's hair and everything. So like I've been through all these phases and she's always touched base with me and goes, how's it going with the kid? How's it going with your baby?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, as soon as I announced that I was adopting, she was the first one to pick up the phone and be like, you did it. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I want to take you back to the BTC Awards when we were
Yeah.
there, whenever that was, just a few months back, and we were chatting. So there was this magic moment that, we have all the displays, and I think we were both looking around in there. We bumped into one another, and I saw you in there, and I went up, and we were talking about the adoption, and I just found it just uh, touching when you told me the story about when you and your husband talked about what you wanted and what the original goal was, and then the story of getting your son and the difference between the two. Can you just? I'd love you to tell that story because I just found it fantastic, fascinating, and absolutely touching.
You're getting me emotional already just thinking about yeah, so I think in life, sometimes you think that you want something a certain way, and so you have an imagination of like how it's going to be, and then all of a sudden, if you just let go of how you think it's supposed to happen, and just let it happen the way that it's going
Mhm.
to, I think that's a big lesson that I learned was like stop trying to manipulate your future and just be in the process, knowing where you want to go with it. And so when I met Jeff, um, the first thing I did, like I had been through husbands, boyfriends, without sounding like I was like some crazy, like I'm very much a relationship person. Um, but by the time I met Jeff, I was like, had kind of like done the boyfriend swap thing where I was like, I was never single. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I just was kind of like, so I met him and he was like, oh, I want to date. And I'm like, I'm not dating anybody. I need some time to be single. And I said, but by the way, if we are going to date, I need you to know, like, I want to be a dad. I've almost let that go. And he goes, are you serious? He's like, I would love to be a dad. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
I still can't date yet, but like, wow, that's crazy. Like to find somebody who's like, he was almost 40 at the time. I just turned 40 now. And he was like, I would be happy to drop everything and have a child with you right now. And I was like, wow. And so then he and I started talking about it. The more we got to know, and you just kind of know, I'm like, he's my person. We found each other for the right reason. And I know we want to have a kid. And so we started talking about like, why do we want to be a father? Like, what is the objective? and I was like, I don't have some biological need to see like my offspring, like that's like,
Mhm.
oh, look at my mother's eyes in my, I have tons of nieces and nephews that I can see my likeness and my family's likeness in them. But I wanted the experience of being a father, and I wanted to be able to say that of all the things that I've done and all the experiences that I've had, that there's a child, there's somebody that I can tell my story to, that
Mm.
makes it all worth listening to and makes my life less like when I live every day now. It's not about what I want or what I'm trying to do. It's or like the vacations I want to take. It's about like, what am I doing for Zach? What
Yeah.
is this money, or where is this trip going? How's it going to impact him? And I don't mean that to sound like I'm some selfless, like, perfect person, but like I watched it with, I have six brothers and sisters, and I watched all of them go from living their life for themselves to living their life for their kids. And it was hard for all of them, but amazing to see them
Yeah.
all change from living for themselves to living for their kids.
And I want to, it just, when we're hitting on those subjects that I'm really keen on here, I want to go back in just a second because I want you to talk about what you and your husband were going to get, because I think
Hmm.
you wanted just this little swaddling baby, and it's not what you ended up with. I want to know that
No.
story,
Yep.
but I want to ask you this question right now because you're there. What's the difference between Ammon when you became a father now versus what you were before?
Um, what's the difference between me now and the way I was
Yeah.
before? I mean, I think now it's I I believed that I would be a good father. I don't think I was as afraid of it as I should have been. I think that now I also realize that like being a father is not in about the moments. It's not about like some teachable moment where he's gonna remember that moment, and from then on, I made the right fatherly decision. I've realized, like, from even just a short amount of time with Zach, that it's just about being there and the energy and being there consistently in his life. That's going to be way more than I realize. Like, it's the long game with kids.
Yeah.
It's the long game when they can feel that that's the steady father that you're there, that you're relying for, and not like some moment that you like whipped up out of a movie and like hand pasted them for. I think that's the part of me that I was taking all these notes from movies and stuff about like how to be the right father in the moment. And I mean, like he's probably going to look at some movies and be like, "Oh, is that where you got that from, Dad?" That was a few months. But it's not about that. You know what I mean? It's about just like, especially him. Zach is. I we initially, and I think this is kind of where you were trying to take me, Chris, was like we went to an adoption agency, or it was like more of like a it's an agency, but they were trying to match us with expected mothers. So we were essentially going to adopt, having met a woman who was pregnant, and then go to the hospital with her, and then on the day of delivery, we would take the child rather than her taking the child, and so there was no like bond disruption.
Yeah.
Um, so that was our plan the whole time. We had like this whole like marketing pamphlet about us and everything. They even have like these like apps now that you can like swipe. It's like Tinder for like pregnant women and like couples. It was the weirdest experience. Where they could like save and like look back at your profile, and you could see how many of these pregnant women had actually like looked back at you, and you're like, what's wrong with us? Why are they picking us as their dads? I'm like, oh my gosh. And then what happened was, completely unexpectedly, like we said that we were like open to any race, any gender, but we just wanted a baby. We wanted the full experience. And all of a sudden, what happened was a little 2-year-old, who had ended up with his grandparents, because of some drug addiction and uh, the mother had committed suicide. Um, the the grandparents were in a place where they were like, well, how can we even be considering this? Like, we cannot even be thinking about like giving this kid up for adoption. He needs to know that he's wanted. And you could just hear it in their voice where they were like killing themselves with guilt for even like considering this conversation, but also realizing that they were like in their 80s and here comes this little kid, and they were like, we can't keep up with him. He needs like, and so anyway, long story short, we kind of grilled each other like, why do you want this? And I was like, why do you think a gay couple is going to be better than a straight couple? And all these things. And it was an amazing sort of like, wait, are you sure? Because I'm not sure if you're going to do this unless we are. And then it was just before my 40th birthday. We were going to go to Miami, and she was like, well, if you're thinking about this, and I said, this kind of came in from nowhere. The agency said like, well, we have this couple, you can talk to them, but they're looking for a baby. And so the more we talked to her, she was like, well, if you want, we're going to come down before you go if you want to just meet him. She's like, my sister or my daughter from my other marriage lives in Draper. That's like the city I live in. And I was like, no way. I was like, okay. So we met Zach when he was 2 years old at a Starbucks, like right down the street from my house now. And I remember talking to Jeff, and I'm like, we're going to bring him a truck. And you watch him when I'm talking to the grandparents to see if there's we were mostly worried to see if like, is there anything that had gone on with him in terms of like exposure to drugs or anything that were going to manifest as like, complications or medically things that we didn't, so we're evaluating kind of, right? But it's so funny. Like, I'm like, just don't fall in love. Because like the kid, of course you're going to fall in love. I mean, that little kid, he killed us. I remember we were sitting there and he was playing with his truck, and I like showed him on the front of his truck that like a little siren could go off. And I'd given him the truck, and then when I touched the truck and made the sound, like a lot of kids, right? He just didn't want me to touch his things. So he kind of looked at me like, and was mad that I had touched his truck. And I was like, and I kind of made a face like I was sad that he was mad at me. I was like, Instead of being mad at him, I just was like, And it was weird. I've never seen a little kid out of all the nieces and nephews. Like, he kind of like looked at me differently, watched me for a second, and then he got up on his own from his chair, and he walked around his grandma, and he laid his head on my lap, and he like hugged me because he didn't want me to feel sad. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, this kid just wants somebody to be proud of him. And that's today. Now I'm going to get emotional. That's like the driving force behind this little kid. He's such a good kid, and he has these little tantrums and everything. But like, to see a little kid that like, I take him in the bath and he's afraid to get his ears wet or his eyes wet or something, but I teach him that it's going to be okay. And the second that he does it and he pops up and his face is just like, are you proud of me? Are you proud of me? And I'm like, yeah, buddy, I'm so proud of you. Like, that's all he wants. He just wants us to be like proud of who he is and who he's becoming. And I'm like, shh, I'm done. I will be your forever family. I will be proud of you to the day you die, little kid. So,
yeah, it's not fair. I cry at cartoons, so that's not fair. But no, I listen. That's one of the main reasons, and you can hear it right here. I know I asked you that other question about what's the difference between before and after. And I think that was it right there, is that I've talked to so many people, Sam Villa, who had kids later in life, etc. And I said to him when he and his wife were pregnant, I went, you're gonna change.
Yeah.
Because, I found even though we had our kids very young, let me rephrase that. When Rita had the kids, I just was standing by. I was a slight contributor, but she did all the work. But when, you're changed forevermore as soon as you have a child. And I don't think it has to have from birth. It's about the responsibility that goes along with having somebody else in your life, that you need to make sure that they, number one, coexist, number two, get better, and number three, have a better life than you had. And I think that it forever changes you as soon as you as soon as you have that child. So, we can hear it in your
I'm
voice right there too.
I'm so happy, and honestly, that's the part of me that I have to just kind of stay like. A lesson for myself right now is, I have worked so hard for 20
Yeah.
plus years, and it's been like nonstop. And I think you and I kind of even lightly touched on it the other time. Like, I have run myself in circles trying to make sure that I kept up and kept on, on pace and up front. And like, there's no time for vacation, or I can't get sick because I have XYZ. And like, I don't know how many people are listening, but have you ever heard yourself say, like, I can't afford to get sick right now, or I'll just need
Mhm.
to get through this time? And then your body will. Like, I remember quite openly, like, the ABS show or whatever it is that came across our roads. It was like, now's not the time to be sick. And I could
Right.
kind of delay it and push it. And
Yeah.
then sure enough, as soon as like I actually had like vacation time or something downtime, then all of a sudden my body just like manifested like all this, okay, well then, and it would just shut down.
Yeah. No,
Um,
it's true. And I'm going to say something on that I am guilty of is I don't take holidays, or I don't take them as much as I should, because hi, my name is Chris and I'm a workaholic. Everybody in the audience is going, hi, Chris. But the point is that I think what happens is when you're constantly pushing your body so hard that it doesn't have a chance to recuperate. And I think that's why I take my hat off to people when I hear them taking their good extended times for, some people call it sharpening the saw, other people just calling rest and relaxation. But the other thing that I found is when I do take time off, that it literally helps me focus and I get ideas that I didn't have when my mind was going so crazy. The other day, you talked to me about that mindfulness.
mhm.
And I just said to you, I don't want to hear anything about it. I want you to save it for the show. I
Yeah,
want to know about it. And because you said that this is what I heard, and I want everybody to hear this, whether you're listening or whether you're watching right now, is you said it's because it's become a game changer for you. So
big
tell us
time.
about it. What is
Yeah,
it?
so
What made you got
mindfulness,
into it? And you even said
yeah.
something that helped you with your child.
Oh yeah. So I the reason I got into it, let's say mindfulness is essentially like for those, and I'm not going to try to become the person who defines it. So you guys can all investigate what mindfulness is for yourself. But for me, the way it came across for me was I and in a point right now in my life where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to make decisions about what's a priority. And
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in having people who are, they're coaches for a reason, right? So, like a coach for a specific, sport or a specific skill set that you
Hmm.
need helps you attune. So, I started working with a coach. And the
For your
biggest thing
mind.
that I told, yeah, well, for like my career and stuff, I was
Oh,
just like,
gotcha.
okay, so here's what I would like to have happen. I've got this child now. I'm at this kind of like crossroads with, do I jump on board with another manufacturer, or what should I be doing and all this stuff. And, so without her telling me anything about what I should do, it was more about like, why don't we take a step back and kind of like observe who we are for a second, like. And so mindfulness for me has been just all the reasons that I said I didn't have time for, like, I don't have time to meditate, or I don't have time to like have all this self-awareness because I'm busy. Like, find somebody else
Mm.
to like help you, like. And so mindfulness is really, for me, what I understood about it was more like you can even just be going through the regular stuff that you don't even think. When your brain goes onto autopilot, you can then check in with your mindfulness. For example, when you brush your teeth, like,
Hmm.
you're usually thinking about something else because you're going on autopilot, right? If you
Hmm.
take a second, instead of thinking about the next thing you're rushing to, and just pause and think about everything sensory wise that's going on with your teeth brushing, whether it comes down to like the ingredients on the toothpaste or whatever it is. Like, I think that what my coach really helped me with, she was like, okay, so you're drinking your coffee right now, right? She's like, instead of just drinking your coffee and talking to me, take a second and just say, I'm going to be mindful for the next 5 minutes or 3 minutes. She's like, and just look at your coffee, smell your coffee, appreciate where the coffee came from, all the
Mm.
people that it took to get that coffee in that coffee cup, and all the things that you're kind of like, but you're just taking a second, you're being mindful of before you just chug it down and throw it away and move forward. Just take a second and like stall and appreciate and savor all the things. And then all of a sudden, when you put it in your mouth and just instead of just swallowing it, taste it and think about all those people and taste the flavor. And then when you all of a sudden, like when you're swallowing, there's a greater appreciation, or it's more of an
Mm.
experience than just like chugging. And that's not to be like everybody. I want you guys to every little bite to be like, oh, like I'm not that way, but like it changed for me because all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, now I could say things like, hi, anxiety, Ammon. I
Mm.
recognize what that feeling is, right? Instead of where what I had gotten accustomed to doing, Chris, and this is me being very vulnerable. I became aware of like anxiety later in life, like in my 30s. All of a sudden, it like hit me that I was like, "What is this?" And I was like
Mm.
crippled by anxiety, and I went to the doctor, and we started to try like take medication, but like nobody had ever talked to me like this coach, where I could actually just like say, "Hi, I know what you are." That little like vibration in the pit of my stomach. Like I
Mhm.
recognize you as anxiety, and I don't have to scramble to find a pill to squash you or try to like psych myself into kicking you out. I can just recognize that's what you are, and say, instead of saying I hate you, say like it's a part of me that's afraid, or that's afraid that I'm going to put myself out there and get hurt. And
Yeah.
so instead of looking at it like something needs to be like pushed away, I almost need to look at it. I look at it now when I get anxious. This is going to sound so stupid. I've never actually said this out loud. You're the first person to start this, but like I feel it and I think of it like we have like two kittens. We have two cats that Jeff came in. I remember Stella when she was just teeny little big, and everything in the world made her terrified, and she just needed somebody to come to you. It's okay. It's okay. And so I feel almost like Stella, like a little baby kitten or a little puppy in my stomach that's just kind of like, but what if you go out there and it's scary? And I'm like, hey, I've done this before. It's okay. I'll be
Mhm.
here. And it's like me talking to myself that it's okay. But and it doesn't make it go away, but it's a lot better than trying to run to the medicine cabinet or just try to pulverize it because it's part of you. And so that was kind of like the long-winded way for me to say like mindfulness is a way for us just to like recognize who we are, what we're doing, and be more intentional with what we're doing. And some of the exercises that she's given me are so cool, Chris, because now I can take like coaching exercises that I would normally
Right.
just take, but I could apply them and like ask like Zach. So it's so cool to say like uh like affirmations. Like if you get up in the morning and say like, "Good morning, Ammon, I love you." Like big deal. Nobody knows, right? But like if I start telling Zach to say that, like it is the cutest thing and the proudest thing in the world. And I don't want to like take his thunder, but like he gets up, and if people ask him, like they're like, "Hey, what's your name?" And he'll go, "I'm Zach Carver, and I am smart, and I am kind, and he does it like it's the cutest thing in the world. Because like since he first came with us, I remember him standing in the mirror and he was brushing his teeth, and I said, "Hey, look at that guy. Look at that guy." And he was like, I go, "Who is that guy?" And he goes, "Zach Carver." And I go, "What about it?" And they go, Who is he?" And he goes, "He's handsome." I go, "No, no, no, not like that. How do you say?" He goes, "Handsome." And I was like, all these things that I'm like, come
Oh.
on, say it out loud. Like every day I'm hearing myself use the same things that this coach is giving me, and I'm feeding them to Zach and watching it have like an instant reaction in a 3-year-old that you don't take seriously as an adult because you're like, "Oh yeah, whatever." But like we do like gratitude list at night with Zach. I mean, I've had him for 6 months and he already has a notebook a 3-year-old a notebook with every night what he's grateful for, and he gets to see what's different from now and 6 months ago. And let me tell you, the first time you ask him and he goes, light, table, dada. And now he closes his eyes on the edge of his bed and he goes, grateful for sunny days, grateful for swimming. And then all of a sudden you're like, listen to him be mindful about what he's grateful for. And it's like, I'm so happy that I can give him these tools. And that's kind of what I'm like. So I'm over appreciative, I guess. I don't know what the word is anyway, but like my coach is like, wow, you're really like taking this. I'm like, no, it's because I can see how impactful it is. If I actually like listen and do it, and like we're like, what's the word that I was just thinking of earlier, like just like let go and go with like go get into the process, just like stop thinking about where you're trying to have happen. Like, yes, Ammon, you want to be a dad, but it doesn't mean you have to be a surrogate, or it doesn't mean you have to like, go find a doctor. Just like let the energy of the world that like the process happen. So that's what I'm focusing on right now, Chris. If anybody asks me right now what I'm doing, I'm just like, I'm in the process. I'm just like living the process of appreciating and showing the gratitude to the world that I have been so given. Like, I mean, I'm so fortunate. We all are to be where we are now. And I have been blessed to have this little kid in my life that has forced me to pause. And right now, that's all I'm focusing on is being there for him and remembering all the things that I'm telling him. I'm like, oh, Ammon, you're not teaching Zach. You're reminding yourself that this is how you need to be.
Yeah,
And
and it's
I'm so
interesting.
grateful for that.
It's interesting, isn't it, that like our family does gratitudes, and it took us, well, probably it wasn't about until about 10 years ago, our coach started us giving gratitude, and probably that has a little wrinkle, not as much as you're going into with your coach, but about I find that the biggest thing I found about gratitude is your mind doesn't know the difference between real and made up.
Yeah.
So whatever you tell it is what it is. So the more that you just spout, I remember in our family, I remember us driving around Italy and we were just in the car. You'd say, um, okay, everybody, 10 things you're grateful for. And you just have to spout it off, the cat, whatever it was, but you just spout off 10 things you were grateful for. And it didn't matter how you felt before that, you feel amazing after it, you know?
Yeah.
So gratitudes, affirmations, etc., all there. Now, I want to, I can't believe it. We've talked about all this time, and we have hardly talked about your work, and the hair, etc. But I mean, I said this to you the other day, and I'm going to say it again. What I love about your work is you have a way of making hair just really beautiful, and you push the envelope with it, um, and I know that when I watch the work and I see the work, I've always been just a huge admirer of it. And I know that when people see your work and they see your work in the magazines, they see you on stage, they admire you, and when you're walking by, and they don't see us like who we are after and so on, but they just see you as that superstar on stage. And I'm sure that even with this amount of success that you've had, every once in a while you probably have to go and pinch yourself just a little bit because you made it. But I want to talk to you just a little bit about what was the climb like as you went through there, and then what was the climb like, and are there times inside there that you did doubt yourself?
Yes. Still happening. That's an ongoing sort of like, are we our own worst critic? But yeah, I mean, I think that the climb would be for me, just like the first step in the climb for anybody is just being willing to try, right?
Yeah.
Like I like to think of it as like and it's not that this is always the gauge, but it just because it's such a great gauge for me is that the North American Hairdressing Awards. The first time that I ever entered was like my second year as a hairdresser. Like I just started and I was like, and they said, you know, this is the Oscars for hairdressing and all these things that like make you go like, oh, I'm not going to try, because then like, you know, like it's the easiest thing in the world to just like avoid, so that way you don't have to like be sat in front of and said like, well, here, this is why you're not where you could be. But like if you let that stop you, then you'll just forever, there always will be a reason. You're never going to be totally prepared. You're never going to have as much money as you think you'll have. Just do it. Stop making excuses. Just do it. And if it sucks, then like you look back and go, oh my gosh, that's a bad idea.
The other part of it is just, if you can enter, don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
Don't tell anybody.
if you don't get nominated, nobody knows,
finals,
right? Like, it's only you just telling people, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, I have had the best career making some stupid photo shoot ideas happen. And I think it's just because I'm like, that is in my brain, something that I feel so passionate about. And then that's where I feel so, that's where my I get so excited as a creative when I'm able to bring forth what's in my mind and in my heart, and it is actually like transpires onto an image. And if I can like have somebody see a picture or a collection and feel without me saying words, but they can feel and tell the story, then I'm like, bam, I did it. But if they're just pretty pictures, okay, fine. But now that's where I try to like push myself, is to go like, you did, what am I saying? Like, cool, pretty pictures, yay, shiny hair, like lots of great stylists out there, but like, what's the point? Like, what are we trying to say, and who are we? Like, so that's where I challenge myself now, is like, do I really need another photo shoot in my portfolio? No, but like, if I'm going to do it, what are we saying? And so that's where I think my work has sort of changed, probably in the last 5 to 7 years, maybe a little bit more, is that like now when I conceptualize and put together photo shoots, they really are, they have a story behind them. And if you dig in a little bit, or if I have a production company that's captured like some behind the scenes, dialogue, then you can kind of go, oh, I totally get it. Even if you didn't get exactly the story, you could see it a little bit. But I'll tell you, I am grateful that I was raised to be able to handle critique. That I never shut myself off to saying like, oh, wait, you don't like it? Well, fuck you. It doesn't help any of us grow, because it's hard to hear that somebody doesn't like your work. And it's a very personal feeling sometimes. It feels like you've been personally affronted if they're like, ew. And you're like, but tell me, like, why? Is it just because you don't like that color? Or like, what is it about it? And obviously there's like things that you learn also, like you'll know better than anybody, but like the way you tell somebody, right? And now that I've had the opportunity, and it's probably my proudest thing next to winning these awards now and looking at my work, is being able to go to that award show or go and hear people and realize that I didn't win any trophies, but I impacted almost every category. And like my name was like the winner of every category, was like saying something about an influence or an impact that I had made. And I was like, that's freaking awesome. Makes me feel like I've touched and not just like done the work, but I've actually inspired people to think bigger or believe in themselves more. And so I think that's where you start to go. At first, the process was just literally like, am I capable? And then as you grow, you're like, okay, I know I'm capable. Am I able to communicate it to the team or to the photographer? This is what I'm trying to see. Can you see it? And check your pride, because you're like, I know he's taking good pictures, but is he seeing what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And so that's when you start to develop relationships where you can push with other artists and say like, I know you're great. I'm not saying you're not. I just need you to see this way. And that's when I found that other artists that are so amazing I've earned their respect, is when they're able to go, oh, see, that's a really key quality to be able to take what you're proud of and with other artists or photographers or people that are really good and say, no, I'm not I'm not like against what you're saying, but hear what I'm trying to say and kind of massage it and work it. Because that's the only way. Like, and I've been able to probably, Chris, one of my favorite things as I've grown is I love putting together teams. Like that
Mm.
Ammon Carver studio team that I had in New York City. Oh, we were
You got
like,
you have to tell the story about when you left.
yeah.
Tell the
So
story. I mean, first of all,
yeah,
finish what the feeling of
yeah,
that was like. And I'm sorry for jumping on you, but that you
no,
told
no,
me that story a while back about
yeah.
when you left it. It's so different than anything that I've ever heard about when somebody left the salon that they owned. So, and tell us about the
Yeah.
team, and then tell
So
us that
the
story.
idea is like for me, and this happened because of the coaching, right? So I've told her my story, and I'm telling her all these things, and she's like, "What I'm hearing is that you have a really huge pride in being able to put together a team of people that have the right culture and the right idea and the right like vibe." And I'm like, I do. I'm very proud of that. Like any team that I've been able to call myself the leader of, that you've known, Chris, like I am my heart is drenched in those people, and it's because I am a firm believer that people will follow you, but then if you are leading with the right reason, you don't ask them to do anything, they just show up. And that's where like this Ammon Carver studio like team, I mean, I moved to New York, told you already earlier, with like no money, nothing, and I landed, working freelance or working in a salon that was in the Plaza Hotel, and so I got to go from like Utah to like all of a sudden I was in like that top class salon where I was like, how are these people even paying all this money? And I kind of got an idea to like where the clients would come in, and I got to know them as real people. And I was like kind of trying to relate with them. And they were like, I mean, let's be straight up. I don't really need coffee cups with like gold plated, like, I don't fucking care. And I was like, why are you paying this? And so it was a great way for me to kind of, when I went to open my salon, I remember my manager, she was like, Emin, it's getting complicated because you work in this high-end salon, but that's not really your brand. But then we have some people in and they get filtered through the salon and they come sit with you. She's like, we need a place that's like clearly says this is Ammon Carver from the experience. And I was like, okay, because I'm not about like trying to like tell the stylist in the salon to make more money behind the chair. She goes, no, just you be you and like love them and nurture them, and I will be the business person. I'm like, okay, deal. So she and I opened up this studio, and it was cool because I had aspirations when I moved to New York of not becoming a salon owner, but I wanted to like be, editorial stylist, like doing, hair for magazines and stuff like that. And so over the years, I had developed this really great, like on-set eye, and I loved it. And she was like, let's not open just a salon, let's open a salon photo studio. And I was like, okay, now you got me. So we basically made it so like the front of the salon was one way, and the back of the salon, the front of the salon always stayed open as a salon, and the back of the salon had rotating stations or could be set up as like a photo shoot station. And so that became like kind of like the epicenter of how I met all of these people that I now work with. They kind of filtered through where there was a photo shoot, and I was like, oh, you're fantastic. I'm going to keep you through my little filtration and just like cling to you.
Yeah.
And that's how I met Richard Monsieur. I was working with a brand, and he was a photographer that came from Holland and was like, it is my dream to work in the States. And I was like, you are amazing. Let's make that dream come true, my friend. And now he is like the most requested hair photographer in the US when it comes to all these hair brands. And he just started off like as a
Wow.
Dutch photographer who was like, I want to try. So sorry. So the team thing was so fun. Like I thought the salon, I was like, if I open a salon, the stylists they're going to be amazing. They're just going to show up. Oh my gosh. Oh, no, no. Let's just say it doesn't happen like that. Okay. So I remember I was almost a year open, and I was like, is anybody going to come try to like want to work for me or what? And finally, like I just said to myself, I go, I don't want to hire people. I want to hire like a family and put together a family. Like, I don't want to have a front desk person or somebody that's watching everybody close things. Like, I'm going to give every stylist that works here access to the salon like it's theirs. So that if they have a VIP client that needs to go on the news or see whatever the Today Show and they got in the salon at 4 a.m. because I've been there, like, then they have access to it. But they also have the responsibility of putting it away and taking care of it. So I set that precedent up from the beginning. I was like, listen, I would love to have you here. Here are the rules. And so there was this trust thing right away. And the reason I say that's really important is because the first year that we finally, it was like year 2 of Ammon Carver Studio being open, and I finally had enough stylists to actually put together a photo shoot submission for NAHA. And so we submitted, and that was the year that Ammon Carver Studio won for Salon Team of the Year, and I won for Master Stylist of the Year. So we had all eyes. And I remember going to Vegas with my team, and a lot of them were like, oh my gosh, I knew about NAHA. Like, Ammon, this is so crazy. And I gave them all a little necklace. And I said, you guys, tonight we're going to have the award show. I go, having been here before, like, tomorrow you might go, what happened? And we might never feel this way again, but like, take this and have something intangible that you remember and think about the way this feels, because this is awesome. And this is a really cool moment, but it slides away really quick. So we got on stage, we won, it was like crazy, and then we went back, and I remember we got back to New York, and I called like a team huddle or team meeting, and they were like, what happens now? And I'm like, I go, well, there's not like prize money or anything. I go, the trophy is right there. You guys are welcome to like hang out with it. I go, but really, and I said very seriously, I go, honestly, the only thing that happens right now is we have one chance. We have an opportunity to have the microphone, but they're going to pass it to us for 1 second and say, what do you want to say? I go, so we're brand new on the scene. Who are we? What do we want to say? And I was so happy because it's almost like I had forgotten for a second, Chris, why I started as a hairdresser. Remember I told you, like, I became a hairdresser because I needed to find a way to love myself. And I became a hairdresser because I wanted to remind people that that's why our jobs are important. And then I got caught up in like chasing the fame of being the hairdresser in New York City who had the most covers and all this stuff. And then I asked my team what they wanted to say, and they said, not me, they said, we want to be known as the team that can do that kind of work, but that we do what we do because we want to make a difference in the world. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they were like, let's set up. And one of them raised her hand. She goes, I've been going to this, like, homeless youth shelter. Let's set up so we can go there every 8 weeks and we can be like regularly like there to support. And it just spiraled. And I just sat back and they all just were like, yeah. And then all of a sudden we had a trip to Mumbai, India organized, and it became like this huge thing. And we started a nonprofit called Humane Beauty for Change. It's still pumping. But like, the people asked me, and I've gotten a lot of jobs since then about like, how did you, in 10 years in the salon industry, I had like zero turnover. Like my stylist, I had to let go a couple of stylists, but nobody quit.
Right.
Nobody wanted to leave. And I'm like, I didn't have some special sauce or recipe for like, giving them the right amount of money for how much they made. I was like, it's about purpose. It's about giving them something that they could be proud of and that they felt connected to that was bigger. And so I said, they all came because I was like, yeah, we can do some cool stuff, but this is what it means to be part of this family. You will take care of yourself. You'll look out for each other. And also, like, what we do with our hands and our hearts is not just for the beauty industry. It's to make people know, like, take it one time, Chris. It takes one time for a hairdresser to go into a beauty, like a homeless youth shelter, like a life-changing moment for me. First time I went in with them, and this kid comes in. I don't know his name. All I know is he will not look at anybody. he looking at the floor only. And I was like, hey, what do you want? He won't even say anything. And I just cut his hair. And I'm like, all I know is that people that have come in there could have come in there because of sex trafficking, because of like their home lives are like, either they're LGBTQ and their parents don't, or whatever. But like somehow these kids are there because they haven't been seen, or because somebody has never ever told them that they are anybody or worth looking at. Or my imagination can only tell me what brought that kid in. But I remember finishing, no word of exchange, Chris. It's so weird for me that this still hits me, because all I did was, he had like vitiligo coloring. I think it was something he was massively insecure about at the time. But I remember cutting his hair, and when I finished, I said, hey, what do you think? And he looked up, and he just paused. And he just looked at himself, and it's almost like you could see, like in a little movie, where all of a sudden he was like, I don't know who I will be, but I can see somebody.
Yeah.
And I could see him look at himself for the first time, like, hey, you. And I was like, okay, I'm addicted to this feeling now. I'm going to do this for a long time. And so then when you share that with a team, and then you get to go back and talk about it together, that's when you start to create relationships. And, all this time later, when I closed down Ammon Carver Studio, I remember this is the part I wanted to make sure you and I talked about, right? It's like I had gotten this opportunity to go and take that sort of idea and go with a big, a corporate chain that had like 1,300 salons. And they were like, Ammon, imagine what you can do with a team of 12, but now we have 10,000. And I was like, sounds like a bigger purpose. Okay, let's go. So I went on board to kind of like go with this big mission. And my team back in New York, I think, felt a little abandoned, like I had just left them. And they never said that to me. I think they could see where I was trying to go and what my heart was intending. But I very quickly felt like my name was on the wall, but I was that salon figure that wasn't really present. And so I came back after about 2 months in that other role, and I sat down with the team, again, had a team huddle, and I said, hey guys, I have a little announcement. And it was so funny that day, as I was talking with the manager and stuff and saying I need to let them know that I'm going to be, closing the salon. Two things happened. The first was she was like, I love you're going to tell them today. And she was looking at Time Out magazine today, and we had just, for the first time since I'd opened, we made like New York City's top 5 salons. And I was just about to close my name. I was like, hey, listen, it's like, that's good. Let's go out on top. So that was one thing that kind of like hit me. I was like, well, it's a good sign, right? Like, don't hold on to it. Like, that's great. You just made the decision. You're going to let it go. Let it be like, be proud of it. And then right as I was saying that, I said, I don't know. I want to be able to say something to have their future feel secure. And so one of the first guys that I worked with, and he came about, I did not even intend for him. And that's what I'm trying to say again, like, trust the process. Mark Bustos, right?
Yes.
So Mark Bustos, I wanted him to work for me so bad. And I used to go to get my hair cut, and I used to pay Mark Bustos prices, like $200 or something, to get my haircut with Mark Bustos, always trying to like lure him into coming to when I opened my salon. And he was in a great place. He didn't need to come to my salon, and I kind of let it go. And all of a sudden one day I'm like doing hair, and there's a photo shoot, and Mark goes, hey, this is my buddy Manny. And Manny's like dreadlocks and a beard to here. And he's like, what's up, bro? And I'm like, hey. And he goes, this place is dope. And I'm like, thanks. And I'm like, okay. So Manny and Mark are like the barbers, like amazing, amazing, amazing. But both of them are the ones who are like cutting hair for homeless guys on the street on the weekends. And Manny brings all of his love and all of his energy and becomes like my MVP at Ammon Carver Studio. And I'm like, Mark, it was just meant to be. I was like, this is amazing. So I told Manny first thing, I was like, I think I'm going to go close the salon. I go, do you still have aspirations of like being a salon owner in New York. He goes, I will never own a salon in New York City if you are. And I'm like, what if I wasn't? And I go, you can have the salon, you can have the books, you can have the staff, everything. Just keep them together, give them the opportunity to stay together. And he was like, I would be honored. And so it was great because I was able to tell the team, like, hey, this is what's going on. And they were like, it was mutual respect. They were like, that was a hard decision. We respect you for making it and not trying to trail us along the way. And also I said, like, you don't have to, but Manny's our brother, and he's going to take this. And so you guys still have a home, and it's still there. Like they've moved locations, and they changed names. But like, if I go in there, it's my family. They're all still there working elbow to elbow. And it's a wonderful story that I get to be able to like go back and feel like Ammon Carver Studio never really had to have like a time where it like ended. And I think that's just the great thing about our industry and about like how leadership and how like the way you can impact people's lives doesn't have to be like definitive or time stamped. It's like it's going on and on. All these guys are so talented and they've made so many like individual little marks. Like that team that started that first year as like Salon Team of the Year. Now I look at it, I'm like, we had like the juggernauts just like starting, and now they're like going to all these different brands, and I'm like, you go. And it makes me so proud. But it's all, I think it starts from like somebody who kind of gives you like the purpose, right? They say like, don't forget why you're doing it. And I'm grateful for that because they reminded me too. I'm like, yeah, that's why I started doing this.
And what I want to just remind everybody on this story is that when somebody's going to leave a salon, I find so often they either want to close it or milk it for everything that's worth. But you went, here's the keys. Take care of my baby. Yeah. So I thought that was just brilliant. So, Ammon, I'm going to ask you one last question because just before we let everybody go in here, but at Headcases, and for those of you who probably know already, I always say if you're going to be a hairdresser, and if particularly if you're going to get on stage, you're going to be a head case. But I find that most of us, everybody that's out there that I know that's truly successful, they operate from what a technique that I call it's my technique that I named it. I didn't name it either. But there's this Goya method, where you have to get off your ass sets, I call it. It sounds much more PG. But there's always these things that people are always either holding on to, doing wrong, or whatever. There's something that's out there that they should let go of. Or if you had to tell the people that are watching and listening right now of something that they should let go of, what would you say that is?
I mean, I think I've without being set up too much for it, I feel like, the thing that I had to let go of and that's kind of resonated throughout our conversation here is just let go of the expectations. Like let go, like I think that you should absolutely visualize where you want to go and have a clear set path of where you're going, but stop trying to make the steps happen because you're going to have to do the work one way or another. And it may not be the exact steps that you plan. Most of the time it doesn't work out. Like, I don't know about you, Chris, but like most of the times the things that I've gotten to very rarely happened on the path that I thought I was going to have to get them there. And so just let go of the idea and just release yourself to the process of it. Like if you know that your heart and your head are in the humble place and you're in a place where you're like, my thoughts and my actions are aligned with where I want to go and I'm then just let it guide you and stop trying to force it. I think that's where people are like, well, what should I do if I wanted to do what you have? Would you have changed this? And I'm like, I mean, first of all, if you're trying to ask me how to get a shortcut to where I got to, like, it's not going to happen.
Wrong person.
Take the stairs, bitch. Don't get off the elevator.
I love what you said because it's like our good friend Johnny Stellato always says is just be you, just be what you're at. So Ammon, I just want to say again, one more time from one brother to another, I just want to say thank you so much. Telling your stories about your family and just your rise and the situations that go along the way, I think are just invaluable to other people. So, listen, from the bottom of my heart to yours, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor being on here. And I already know that I want to have you and some of the Matrix gang together and get back on one of the podcasts so we can just talk about some of the kick-ass stories, fun stuff, and pranks I'm sure you played on one another. So, Ammon,
That would be fun.
from our team to yours, thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thank you, Chris. Bye, Headcases.